You know, it's pretty rare at my age to ever feel like a kid in a candy store, but that's exactly what Sim Game Expo 2025 was for me. It was amazing. I'm going to tell you all about it. Welcome everyone to Get Your Game On, the channel dedicated to immersive gaming experiences. I'm Mark Shireman, and today we're going to talk about the Sim Gaming Expo that just recently concluded in Chicago, and holy cow, what an expo it was. First and foremost, I've got to give credit to George. My hat is off to you and your entire team. You pulled off an expo that was just simply incredible. Nobody would believe that this was your first attempt at an expo. This was on par with what I'm used to seeing like at PRI and that sort of thing. Obviously not as big, but as far as the quality and how it was prepared and presented, amazing. Great job, and I hope you get to do it for many, many years to come. So before I get into talking about the expo itself, I need to throw some thanks out there to a few folks. So first and foremost, we had a problem with our monitor. As soon as we unloaded the rig and hooked the monitor up, it was dead on arrival. It wouldn't even power up. And so our neighbor, Built PC, I'll leave their link in the description down below, basically saved our butts at TOF. They had a spare monitor. They just let us use it for the expo. They even had a spare set of speakers so that we had the sound from it. It was a lifesaver. So Bill over there, the CEO, thank you so much, and way to go, chef. We really appreciate all your help. I also got to thank the guys at iRacer Lounge, especially David and Greg. They let me come over and graze at their candy dish throughout the event and had a great time getting to talk with them and getting to know them. Just fantastic folks out there, and I really appreciate you guys letting me hang out and have some downtime with you. Just enjoyed the conversation. It was incredible. So thank you guys for that. And then I've got to also thank PV Simulators. They are the ones that actually got our H6 to the show and helped us, you know, basically with setup and just getting everything so we could even be there. So without you, we wouldn't have even had a simulator there. So thank you so much for all your help and for making this possible for us. So with all that out of the way, let's talk a little bit more about the expo itself. And all I can say is don't miss it. If you're ever thinking about going to this, just go. If you're at all into simulation, and especially if you're like me and into motion simulators, this was a can't miss event. I mean, all these machines that I had looked at for years, just kind of drooling over and wishing, these things are in the $100,000 range, and they were all on display for us to try. I couldn't believe it. I had no idea this event was going to be at this magnitude as far as the equipment was there. There had to be $1 million plus worth of equipment at this show. So certainly worth the price of admission, no doubt about it. So let's talk a little bit about the experience. I was working with Igor and DOF Reality, setting up the booth, and as usual, I didn't have a lot of time to get out and try anything. But thanks to Chris Callis, I actually had a few hours at the end of the expo and a few times during the expo to sneak out and actually get to ride some of these rigs. Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and without you, my friend, I wouldn't have a whole lot to even talk about. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, I'll have a link to his channel down in the description as well. So the simulators themselves were incredible. The lines weren't too bad. You did have to catch them at the right time. It was a little difficult for me because when I could break away, I didn't have time to stand in a line. So if the line was short enough, I gave it a try. But a lot of them had longer lines. I did hit the big ones throughout the course of the weekend, and I'm going to do a video talking about how I felt on the different types of rigs, but it was cool to even have the access to them. So we had the likes of, you know, Cubic Systems. We had Podium One there. We had Simcraft there, all of the big dogs. In addition, a lot of the peripherals. Turtle Beach was there with a lot of their peripherals. They were the ones doing a lot of flight sim. You know, Husenfeld was there. I mean, the most surprising thing was, especially when you look at the logo for the expo, there wasn't a lot of VR. There were no major VR headsets there. We had the VR Village, I believe, or Villa, and it was basically an independent person that had brought in a bunch of Quest 3s so people could have have a VR experience. They kind of sectioned off a section of the floor, and they all got to do the various things that you can do on the Quest 3. But aside from that, almost all the simulators were running flat screens or triples. And so that was really surprising to me that we didn't see more virtual reality there. So I'd like to see that in the future. The biggest thing about the event that really kind of surprised and disappointed me, I guess I'd say, was the fact that it was probably 90% racing. It was very heavily sim racing focused, from all the simulators and the setups to a lot of the peripherals there. I would say it was probably 90% racing, probably 9% flight, and 1% various other things. So I'd like to see that change. I'd really like to see if they had more flight. And on that note, George, if you could combine with Evan in the Flight Sim Expo, I mean, if you two could get together and actually bring both of your expos together into one giant gaming expo, Sim Gaming Expo, I think you could have one of the premier expos in the world. So I hope you guys can hook up and connect and maybe talk about that as a possibility. Because Evan certainly has the flight side down. He has the flight sim connections. George, you proved that racing sim is definitely in your wheelhouse. And I just would love to see what would happen if you two guys put your heads together. I think it would be an event unlike any other. So I would certainly be very interested in attending that one for sure. So that being said, I think some of the other interesting things that I saw at the expo, there was one, and I apologize, I don't have any film or any pictures of it, but there was a DIY. I didn't even see the name of the company. It definitely looked like a mom and pa kind of thing or garage style, but this unit, it was $3,500, do it yourself, and it was a 6DOF platform, and it just looked, I mean, it looked crazy. It looked like something you'd see out of, Back to the Future, like Marty McFly or Doc would be putting it together or whatever. I'm sure you can find videos of it somewhere. He was the only one running Rally, so if you see a motion platform that was running Rally, that was the one. But it was crazy. That was the most interesting thing that I saw there. One of the cool things was they actually had 15 racing rigs that were identical, all set up at the front of the expo, and front or back, which however you refer to it, and they had a giant movie style screen up there, and they were competing the entire expo. So they got these 15 people together and they would race, and then the winners would move on to the next round, and that carried on through the whole expo. They had MCs or commentators talking about the virtual racing, and it was really cool to have that kind of going on in the background the whole time. You always kind of had this race ambiance going on. The other thing is, it actually sounded like you were at a racetrack. Everybody's simulators were cranked to 10 as far as volume goes. Everywhere you turned, all you heard were revving race car engines or squealing tires or crashing metal. So it was really a loud expo. It was really, it hit all the senses. So that was kind of an interesting experience as well. So one of the biggest surprises for the show was Stern Pinball was there. They were actually in the booth right in front of us, and they had 8 pinball machines that were running that were free to play. If you watch this channel, you know I love pinball. In fact, we even built a virtual pinball machine for my mom. I'll pin that right up here. And so it was so great to have a pinball machine sitting right next to us. I snuck over there before the show started a few times, played a few games. I even beat Igor at the Jaws pinball machine, so that was kind of cool. In his defense, he hasn't played a lot of pinball, and I grew up with him. So that was a really neat thing to see, and just enjoyed it. And then I think the coolest experience I got to have, just in general, that I hadn't had before. This was the first time I ever got to use the belts. So I used the belts that actually have the feedback system, so they actually tighten as you race. And I've always been interested in that, in the tension belts, but I've never got to use them before. They were a pretty neat add-on, especially for racing, because you hit the brakes and those things would tighten up, and it felt really cool. So I will say that I am very interested in a belt tensioning system down the road. We're looking at trying to figure something out and get it on this rig. It doesn't work as well in flight right now. We need to get some people to work on some software to make the flight variant of it do a little bit more, but for racing, holy cow, it was really, really cool. Some of them were set a little tight. One of them, I almost felt like I was going to crush my collarbones when I hit the brakes really hard. It pulled so hard. So that was pretty cool. And the one experience for me that made the whole trip worth it wasn't even around simulators. I'm a huge IndyCar fan, always have been. I've loved that race since I was a little kid. I watch it every year. And I actually got to meet Tony Kanaan, and it was real brief. He was just heading out, but just even being in the same room and getting to listen to his lecture where he talked a little bit about sim racing and stuff. I got to catch the last half of his presentation where he was kind of bench racing, if you will. And that was a real highlight that I didn't expect. To see someone of Tony Kanaan's caliber at this show just shows you how much work and effort went into it and how much a lot of these companies put into actually making this a fantastic show. There was, I think, also someone was showing off some VR shoes. Something for VR locomotion. I just heard about that and briefly saw it, but didn't get to spend any time looking at that. And just a ton of rigs and static rigs and steering wheels, and it was nuts. I think the VR guys, I think you really missed out. I think some of you VR manufacturers really need to look at getting into this. I think there was definitely people that would have been interested. Folks like Moza, you guys needed to be there. My goodness, this was an incredible show, and not to see you there really, I think was surprising as well. So we'll see what next year brings. I expect it to grow. I expect it to continue to get bigger and bigger. And if next year is anything like this year, you certainly won't want to miss it. If you like sim and you like motion and you like motion sim as much as I do, this is a must-go-to event, no doubt about it. So just plan on doing it, and I think it's going to be well worth the time, effort, and money to go to this show. One of the big things that I really liked about it was the fact that George actually started on Friday, and Friday morning while we still were setting up, we had the morning to set up, he let a lot of the influencers and the podcasters and those folks come in. And so we got to do a lot of our interviews with those folks without all the crowds walking in front of the camera and all that. So I thought that was a great idea. And then obviously when the show opened on Friday afternoon, running into Friday evening, that was a nice little bonus because a lot of times we only do, you know, Saturday, Sunday, and it feels a little short for how much work goes into setting up one of these and the cost of shipping everything there. Having that little extra half day, I think, really added value, at least in my opinion. So I'd like to see that continue, and I'd like to actually see Evan at Flight Sim. You know, I'd like to see you do that as well, because I think that extra little bit makes it that much more worthwhile for, you know, people like DOF Reality and all of us vendors out there and exhibitors. And I've got to thank everybody who stopped by the DOF Reality booth, spent time talking to us, learning more about our DOF Reality simulators, had some great conversations, and really hope that we at least showed you what's possible and somewhat affordable if you are interested in adding motion to your simming experience. We had a great show. We are definitely looking forward to doing it again. And I'm also going to do a separate video that I really detail my experience on these other motion simulators. So if you're wondering what I thought of them, I'm saving that for a dedicated video that I'll be doing down the road and kind of comparing what I thought of a lot of these really high-end motion simulators and how I felt they compared to something like a DOF Reality H6. So stay tuned for that. If you want to see that, make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss it when it comes out. So that's what I have for you folks today. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, remember to get your game on.